In the landscape of American entertainment, few figures have risen as high or fallen as dramatically as Ellen DeGeneres. For nearly 2 decades, she transformed daytime television into a sanctuary of joy, ending each show with 3 simple words: be kind to one another. Yet behind the laughter and the dancing, behind the Emmy Awards and presidential medals, lay a story far more complex than the world ever imagined. This is the tale of a woman who survived childhood trauma, professional exile, and cultural revolution, only to face her greatest challenge when the very foundation of kindness she built came crashing down. What remains when the applause fades? What truth lies beneath a smile that conquered America? Childhood Shadows, January 26, 1958, Metairie, Louisiana. Ellen Lee DeGeneres entered a world that would test her long before fame ever found her. Born into a modest middle-class family, young Ellen seemed destined for an ordinary life. Her father, Elliot, worked in insurance. Her mother, Betty, maintained their home. An older brother, Vance, completed the picture of suburban American normalcy. But normalcy shattered in 1973. Ellen was just 15 when her parents' marriage collapsed. The divorce split more than a family. It fractured her sense of safety. While Vance remained with their father, Ellen followed her mother to Atlanta, Texas, into a new marriage that promised fresh beginnings. Instead, those walls would harbor secrets that would scar her for life. What happened next would haunt Ellen for decades. Her stepfather violated boundaries no adult should ever cross with a child. The betrayal cut deeper because of its timing. Betty DeGeneres was battling breast cancer, her body weakened by treatment, her spirit consumed by survival. When Ellen finally gathered the courage to tell her mother, her words met disbelief. Not from malice, but from a mother too overwhelmed by her own suffering to comprehend such horror. That rejection became a second wound. Ellen learned a cruel lesson. Sometimes the truth is too painful for others to bear. The isolation of those teenage years, the suffocating silence of a home where no one believed her pain, forged something unexpected within her. Humor became her armor. Laughter became her weapon against darkness. She learned to perform joy while drowning in sorrow, a skill that would define her career. Years later, Ellen would describe those moments as the hardest performance she ever gave, learning to dance through life while crying inside. The Hunger Years. By 1976, Ellen walked away from the University of New Orleans after a single semester. She carried no degree, no connections, no safety net. What she possessed was a stubborn refusal to surrender and a battered notebook filled with jokes that no one had heard yet. New Orleans became her proving ground. She took every job survival demanded. Secretary in a law office, her fingers aching from endless typing. Retail clerk at J.C. Penney, folding clothes until her back stiffened. House painter with chemical-stained hands. Waitress balancing trays through smoky diners. Bartender serving drinks to strangers whose laughter never included her. Each paycheck barely covered rent. Each shift drained something she couldn't name. But poverty taught her lessons that privilege never could. She learned to stretch dollars across weeks, to choose between food and bus fare, to smile at customers while hunger twisted her stomach. Through it all, she carried that notebook. Coffee, stained pages filled with observations, jokes, fragments of pain transformed into punchlines. In a cramped apartment with peeling walls, Ellen rehearsed alone, sometimes to a cracked mirror, sometimes to her pet, the only witness to a young woman refusing to disappear into obscurity. She wasn't polished yet, wasn't confident, but she was relentless. Every scribbled joke was an act of defiance. Every midnight practice session was a promise to herself that she would not remain invisible. Breakthrough. The early 1980s found Ellen stepping onto dimly lit stages across New Orleans. Small clubs, indifferent audiences, nights when silence greeted her punchlines. But her style was distinctive, intelligent, self-deprecating, observational. She transformed everyday absurdity into comedy, turning personal scars into universal laughter. Word spread through the comedy circuit. The funniest person nobody knew. That whisper eventually reached the gatekeepers of American comedy. In 1986, the call came that changes careers, an invitation to The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. For any comedian, Carson's stage was sacred ground. Success there meant legitimacy. Failure meant obscurity. Ellen walked onto that stage with trembling hands and a pounding heart, but but she carried something more valuable than confidence: authenticity. Her set was sharp, observational, disarming. And then came the moment that validated everything. Johnny Carson beckoned her to the couch, a gesture reserved only for comedians he believed possessed star quality. That night, Ellen DeGeneres stopped being a struggling comic and became a rising force in American entertainment. The applause wasn't just for her jokes. It was for a journey that had begun in isolation and silence, now exploding into national recognition. Primetime and the Price of Truth. By the mid-1990s, Ellen had climbed from comedy clubs to primetime television. Her sitcom, simply titled Ellen, brought her observational humor to millions of living rooms. She had achieved what seemed impossible: her own show, her own platform, her own slice of the American dream. But Ellen carried a secret that grew heavier with each season. She was gay, living in an era when such truth could destroy careers. For years, she maintained the silence that Hollywood demanded, until 1997. The episode became legendary, the puppy episode. On screen, Ellen's character came out. Off screen, Ellen herself stepped into the same truth on the cover of Time magazine. The headline read, "Yep, I'm gay." 3 words that would change her life forever. The response was seismic. Advertisers fled, conservative groups boycotted, ratings plummeted. What should have been celebrated as groundbreaking courage instead became professional suicide. In 1998, Ellen was canceled. Not because it lacked quality or humor, but because America wasn't ready for a woman brave enough to live openly. Ellen DeGeneres transformed overnight from beloved comedian to cultural pariah. Hollywood's doors closed. The phone stopped ringing. She had gambled everything on authenticity and lost spectacularly. The cost was devastating: career, reputation, the very platform she had fought so hard to build. But within that devastation lay the seeds of something greater. Ellen's fall was not failure. It was the sacrifice required of pioneers. She had walked through fire so that others might follow a clearer path. The Phoenix Ellen refused to stay buried. Rejection had destroyed many before her, but she carried something deeper than ambition. She carried survival instinct, forged in childhood shadows and sharpened through years of poverty. Through the late 1990s and early 2000s, she rebuilt her life one small step at a time. She returned to intimate comedy clubs where audiences numbered in dozens rather than millions. She took voice work that kept her name circulating. She accepted guest appearances on shows that once would have begged for her presence. Each performance was an act of defiance, a refusal to let cancellation become her final chapter. Her resilience was extraordinary. Lesser spirits would have surrendered to bitterness or obscurity, but Ellen possessed something unbreakable, the same stubborn will that had carried her through childhood trauma and the hunger years. Then, in 2003, lightning struck twice. The Ellen DeGeneres Show premiered on September 8th, and daytime television would never be the same. What began as an uncertain gamble by networks still wary of her past became a cultural phenomenon that exceeded every expectation. Ellen transformed her studio into something unprecedented, a cathedral of joy where dancing wasn't just permitted but expected, where laughter felt communal rather than performative, where random acts of generosity became her signature. She gave away cars to unsuspecting audience members. She surprised teachers and nurses with life-changing checks. She turned ordinary people into celebrities for a day, validating their existence with a spotlight that cost nothing but meant everything. For 19 seasons, Ellen commanded daytime television with an authority that seemed effortless. She won 30 Daytime Emmy Awards, a testament to her dominance. More importantly, she created a daily space where millions found comfort during lunch breaks and afternoon escapes. Her studio became a refuge from the world's harshness, a place where kindness wasn't weakness but strength. Her influence extended far beyond television. In 2003, the same year her show launched, she gave voice to Dory in Pixar's Finding Nemo. The forgetful blue tang fish, optimistic despite her disabilities, became one of animation's most beloved characters. 13 years later, Ellen reprised the role in Finding Dory, proving that her voice had etched itself into global consciousness as a symbol of resilience and hope. Hollywood, which had exiled her in 1998, now begged for her presence. She hosted the Academy Awards in 2007, again in 2014. commanding entertainment's most prestigious night with grace and humor. She guided audiences through the Grammys and the Emmys, her wit and timing transforming awards shows into celebrations rather than endurance tests. The industry that once rejected her now celebrated her at its highest levels. The culmination arrived on November 20, 2016, when President Barack Obama placed the Presidential Medal of Freedom around her neck, the highest civilian honor in America. Standing in the East Room of the White House, tears streaming down her face, Ellen received recognition not merely for entertaining millions, but for changing hearts and opening minds. Obama praised her courage, her authenticity, her refusal to hide even when hiding seemed safer. The irony was staggering and profound. In 1997, honesty had nearly destroyed her. Networks canceled her show, advertisers fled, Hollywood turned its back. She became a cautionary tale about the dangers of being too authentic, too visible, too honest. Yet by 2016, that same honesty transformed her into a national treasure. The truth that once cost her everything became the foundation of her legacy, proof that pioneers pay in present pain for future generations' freedom. Love's battlefield. Ellen's romantic journey carried its own storms. In 1997, as she came out publicly, she walked the red carpet hand in hand with actress Anne Heche. That simple act, two women refusing to hide, ignited controversy. Hollywood recoiled. Anne's family rejected her. The media circled like vultures. Their relationship lasted until 2000, a love that burned bright but suffocated under societal pressure. When they parted, neither walked away unscathed. For Anne, the road grew darker. Years of public struggles with mental health followed, culminating in tragedy. In 2022, a fatal car crash claimed her life at age 53. It was a haunting reminder of how costly authenticity had been in those early years. After Anne, Ellen found quieter companionship with photographer Alexandra Hedison. Their 3 years together, from 2001 to 2004, offered respite, a chance to breathe away from the spotlight. But it was transition, not destination. Alexandra represented healing, the bridge between heartbreak and the love that would finally anchor Ellen. In 2004, Ellen met Portia de Rossi. The Australian actress, known for Ally McBeal and Arrested Development, carried her own hidden wounds, eating disorders, depression, the weight of concealing her true self in an unforgiving industry. When their eyes met, it was recognition. Two women who had learned to survive saw in each other something rare: safety. Their connection deepened into partnership. In 2008, when California briefly legalized same-sex marriage, they seized the moment. In an intimate ceremony at their Beverly Hills home, surrounded by close friends and family, Ellen and Portia exchanged vows. Ellen was 50. Portia was 35. Both had waited lifetimes for a promise society had long denied them. Their marriage was not just personal, it was political, a public declaration that love could not be legislated away. Through 19 years together, they have weathered storms that would break lesser bonds. Portia stood unshakably beside Ellen when controversy struck. That loyalty proved more valuable than any accolade Ellen ever received. The unraveling. March 20, 2020. The world sat in lockdown, isolated and anxious, hungering for connection in a time of unprecedented fear. That morning, comedian Kevin T. Porter fired off a tweet that seemed almost playful, a bit of dark humor to cut through the monotony of quarantine. "Right now we all need a little kindness," he wrote. "You know, like Ellen DeGeneres always talks about." Then came the twist. She's also notoriously one of the meanest people alive. He invited others to share their stories, promising to donate to the Los Angeles Food Bank for each response. What followed was nothing short of a digital avalanche. Within hours, hundreds of replies flooded in. By the next day, thousands. Former staff members broke their silence. Audience members shared uncomfortable encounters. Service workers, baristas, waiters, security guards recounted moments of coldness that contradicted everything Ellen's public persona represented. Some claimed they had been explicitly instructed never to make eye contact with her, as if her gaze was reserved for cameras alone. Others described an atmosphere of fear backstage, where smiles vanished the moment the applause died down. The stories painted a portrait of two Ellens, the radiant host who danced with audiences and the distant figure who barely acknowledged those who made her show possible. The contradiction was devastating. For nearly 2 decades, Ellen had built her empire on 3 words: be kind to one another. It was her signature, her brand, her promise to America. Yet now, that very foundation cracked under the weight of testimony from those who claimed to have witnessed the opposite. The internet, restless during quarantine and hungry for narratives that felt real, seized upon the discrepancy with fury. Hashtags trended. Think pieces multiplied. Old clips resurfaced. Moments with Mariah Carey, Dakota Johnson, Taylor Swift. Interactions once dismissed as awkward banter, now replayed as evidence of something darker lurking beneath the surface. What began as social media gossip escalated rapidly into full-blown crisis. By July 2020, BuzzFeed News published a comprehensive investigation that moved the story from rumor to record. 10 former employees came forward on record, describing what they characterized as a toxic workplace culture. They spoke of fear that permeated the production offices, intimidation that kept staff silent, humiliation disguised as management. The allegations extended beyond Ellen herself to 3 senior producers who faced accusations of serious misconduct, claims of sexual harassment, racist comments, and retaliatory firings that created an environment where speaking up meant risking everything. The response was swift. Warner Media, the parent company, launched an internal investigation. Within weeks, all 3 producers were removed from their positions. The machine that had run Ellen's show for 17 years was being dismantled in real time, its inner workings exposed to harsh daylight. When Ellen's show returned for its 18th season in September 2020, the studio felt different. The energy had shifted. Ellen herself addressed the controversy in her opening monologue, standing alone on a stage that suddenly felt vast. "I take responsibility for what happens at my show," she said, her voice steady but lacking its usual buoyancy. "This is the Ellen DeGeneres show. I am Ellen DeGeneres." She apologized for the workplace failures, admitting that the culture behind her brand of kindness had not lived up to the values she preached every afternoon. For some viewers, it was a moment of genuine accountability, a powerful figure acknowledging her blind spots. For others, the words rang hollow, softened by nervous jokes that felt tone deaf, an attempt to laugh away something that demanded solemnity. The apology could not reverse the damage. Ratings, which had remained strong for years, plummeted by more than 1 million viewers within months. Advertisers grew cautious. Sponsors quietly withdrew. The reservoir of public trust that had sustained Ellen through 2 decades of daytime dominance drained with shocking speed. Even celebrity defenders, Katy Perry, Kevin Hart, and others who vouched for Ellen's character, could not stem the tide. Other voices, including actors Brad Garrett and Leah Thompson, confirmed that the stories reflected a reality they had witnessed firsthand. By May 2021, the writing was clear. Ellen announced that season 19 would be her last. She framed the decision as creative evolution, claiming that after 19 years, the show no longer challenged her. But the timing spoke louder than her words. This was not a victory lap planned years in advance. This was an exit necessitated by circumstances beyond her control. The stage that had been her sanctuary, her pulpit, her daily connection to millions, was no longer sustainable. When the final episode aired on May 26, 2022, Jennifer Aniston, the very first guest from Ellen's premiere in 2003, returned to bookend the journey. The studio filled with applause, tears, and expressions of gratitude. Clips from 19 years played across screens, reminding audiences of the joy the show had delivered. Ellen spoke of her pride, her exhaustion, her readiness to move forward. Yet beneath the celebration lingered an unmistakable tension, a collective awareness that this ending had been forced rather than chosen. An era was closing not in the blaze of triumph Ellen had once imagined, but in the haze of ambiguity, a legacy now forever complicated by the gap between the woman on camera and the reality behind it. The cost of time beyond controversy. Ellen faced an enemy she could not outrun: her own body. In 2023, at 65, she revealed what she had long kept private. Osteoporosis was thinning her bones, making even minor falls dangerous. Arthritis swelled and stiffened her joints, turning mornings into battles. Obsessive, compulsive disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder created relentless mental exhaustion. "I always thought I was just restless," she confessed. But now I know my brain never stopped running and my body can't always keep up. As she approached 70, the toll deepened. Chronic back pain from vertebral compression, sharp flares in her knees and hands, fatigue that no amount of rest could cure. For a woman once defined by boundless energy, dancing across stages, commanding audiences, the betrayal of her own body was profoundly cruel. Yet Ellen adapted. Therapy became essential, not optional. She restructured her days around gentler rhythms, slow stretches instead of dances, meditation to quiet her racing mind, the courage to decline demands that once defined her. Through it all, Portia became more than a spouse. She became a caretaker, matching her pace to Ellen's slowing steps, redesigning their home into a sanctuary of comfort. Their retreat to England's Cotswolds in 2025 symbolized this transformation. Far from Hollywood's glare, surrounded by rolling hills and centuries-old cottages, Ellen and Portia found peace. Mornings arrived with mist and birdsong rather than studio schedules. Days measured themselves in garden walks, art books, and the presence of beloved animals. Ellen continued her passion for real estate, buying and restoring properties with Portia. Over the years, they had flipped more than 20 luxury homes. Her net worth approached $450 million, yet no fortune could silence the ache in her bones or quiet the storm in her mind. Wealth provided comfort, but not immunity from mortality's indignities. Legacy in Twilight. Ellen DeGeneres' legacy resists simple judgment. She was brilliant, a comedian whose timing, intelligence, and originality transformed her craft. She was courageous, coming out in 1997 when such honesty meant professional destruction. She was influential. Her talk show reshaped daytime television and her visibility advanced LGBTQ+ acceptance. Yet she was also flawed. The workplace allegations, whether fully accurate or exaggerated, revealed a gap between public image and private reality. The woman who preached kindness struggled to embody it consistently behind closed doors. That contradiction doesn't erase her achievements, but it complicates them. Perhaps the truest measure of Ellen lies not in her perfection, but in her persistence. She survived childhood trauma that silences many. She endured poverty that breaks spirits. She weathered professional exile that destroys careers. She faced public crucifixion that crushes reputations. In 2024,